Elena del Vecchio Rusnak.
My, that's a mouthful.
Yes.
It's longer than mine.
And what year were you born?
1946. I'm a baby boomer.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
collect Social Security.
And where did you grow up?
In Stratford, Connecticut. I have 4 siblings. I have an older sister. She's 4 years older than I am. My brother Frank is a year and a half older. I'm number 3, and my brother John is 14 months younger than me. My mom was a teacher. She was a nursery school teacher before she married my dad, and she went back to elementary teaching when I was 12. She only had her normal school degree at that time, so she got her bachelor's degree in Danbury. That used to be before it was called Westcon.
Mm-hmm.
It was Danbury State or whatever.
Was it Danbury Teachers College or something like that? Yeah.
And when I was 16, we went to her graduation. My dad always owned his own business. He had gone to NYU to study dentistry and really hated it, and came back and went into, his dad helped him set up a business, and he was always his own businessman, and worked until he was 80 years old. So I grew up in a household that was very open, very social. My mom loved to throw parties.
Were they first generation born in the United States? Second generation.
Both sets of my grandparents had come here from Italy. My mom was born in Boston, and my dad was born right in Bridgeport. That's where both my parents grew up in Bridgeport.
Yeah.
But they met one another in their late 20s.
Well, maybe they met my grandparents. They lived in Bridgeport too. So, down that wave of immigrants that came in at the turn of that 1900s.
1895.
Yeah.
My father's father came here through Ellis Island. And that was the year that the documents burned. So there's no record. So when we've gone down to Ellis Island and we've gone through the names that are etched, he's not there because there's no record.
But you know that through family records.
Yeah. Well, you asked me who was the most influential person in my life, and especially directing of where I am now, and that is my mom. She was a teacher. She was an educator, and when I went to college, I said, I refuse to go into teaching. I'm not going to do this. I don't want to be like my mom. And then because of circumstances with my fiance at that time, I ended up going into education. I was an English major. And I had really wanted to be an editor in New York City. That was my goal. And at the end of my junior year, I became engaged. And my fiance, who's now my husband, was targeted for Vietnam.
Oh, my.
And at that point, he said, I can't leave you in New York City. You've got to have a job that is going to be stable. And I went into education very late. So at the end of my junior year in college, I changed to English ed instead of just straight English literature. But my mom always had a love for reading. She was always a teacher. And when we were very young, she was involved in the community theater in our town. She used to sew costumes for them. So we used to do the plays when they needed children. And growing up in Stratford, of course, I grew up with Shakespeare. And my first Shakespeare play was when I was in 7th grade to see Midsummer Night's Dream. What better way to be introduced to Shakespeare but with that play?
Right there with the premier Shakespearean theater, right in town.
Yes. And my mom ushered there. She also sewed all my dance costumes. I started dancing when I was 4. She was very much into the arts. My sister had piano lessons and dance lessons and drama lessons, and my brother had drama lessons and piano lessons. By the time they got to me, it was just dance. Things were getting a little thinner, and then, of course, my younger brother was born fairly soon after that. But I was the one who always stayed with dance, and I think that's what made me unique in a fairly large family. is I was successful very early on with dance and had a solo at 4 my first year, and just fell in love with it. And it distinguished me from my sister, who's a Harvard professor. Need I say more?
Yeah.
She was the straight A student. She's just returned from Shanghai, having been awarded the Silver Magnolia Humanitarian Award with 48 other people from around the world. So there was always that competition, and dance always set me apart from her. And so I think that's one of the reasons I stayed with it.
That's a good observation.
It became my passion. My professional influence is twofold. I was doing my student teaching in my hometown in junior and senior high school English, and I had a lovely, lovely mentor. Her daughter danced with Ernestine Stidell in New Haven, and she asked me, "Are you going to continue dancing once you graduate?" And we were getting married very soon after graduation. And I said, "No, probably not. I'm starting a new career." And she said, "That's silly. You shouldn't give up dance. I want you to meet Ernestine." And she took me to her daughter's class. Ernestine Stidell was a legacy of her own in American modern dance. She performed with the Doris Humphrey Company from 1929 to 1936. Doris Humphrey is one of the greats in our 20th century dance form. And at the college now, we teach the Humphrey-Lamone technique. And my adjuncts know that technique because they have studied with Ernestine. I studied with Ernestine for 30 years. The last 10, I was in her company, and I was able to perform not only her works, but also some of Doris Humphrey's works. And I fell in love with the historical end of dance. That got me very, very interested, and from that point on, I started working with the American Dance Legacy Institute of Brown University. I went to a lot of workshops where our American modern dance etudes were being taught, and now the curriculum at the college is very much based on these historical legacy works. So we have quite a few that we teach our students. One of those remarkable people in that she was an intellectual, an academic intellectual, as well as a beautiful artistic person. So that taking her class was always inspirational. She used beautiful imagery when she taught. She taught aesthetics at NYU, and one of the highlights of my dance career was dancing one of her pieces at an NYU faculty concert. You asked for pivotal moments in my life, and there have actually been a few, but one of them was performing her Tragica. And it was 6 women representing the wives and daughters left behind by men who've gone to war. And she originally choreographed it during the Bosnia conflict. And performing it at that concert at NYU was one of the first times, I think, when I actually felt embodied by the character of the dance. And it really almost took over all of my movement, and it was very moving for me. It's a very moving dance. We are dressed in peasant outfits and had scarves and aprons, long skirts, dark clothing. So the whole representational side of the piece, I think, is very strong. And the music is very strong. It's by Albinoni. Beautiful piece of music. So that, I think that showed me what dance can be and how exciting it can be. It's not about doing steps. It's really about understanding the emotional intent behind the artistic movement.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Beautifully said.
I guess one of the other pivotal events in my life was I got very involved in dance at UConn, where I got my bachelor's degree. I had an advisor who said, "You can't dance. You have to choose something else." And of course, there's no dance major at UConn stores. But there was a modern dance organization. And that modern dance organization began in the physical ed department, where dance, modern dance especially, actually started in the 1930s through one of our WPA projects. And the artists of the early 20th century were moved into the college system in the United States via the physical education, and that's where dance started. So I took modern dance as my first gym class and got to know the dancers and immediately joined their performing group, Orchesis, which is a name from Greek. Whether it means dance or dance community, I'm not exactly sure. But we were able to put on concerts twice a year of our own choreography. And that's when, actually the second time that I really started working on my own choreography. I had done some in high school, especially for other students in variety shows and things like that. But from that point on, I really never stopped taking class or performing until fairly recently. And I performed the entire time I was an English teacher, and even when I had my children and wasn't teaching English anymore, I still was in performing groups. And I turned 40 and said, I have taken all these classes, I have performed with 7 different companies, and I don't have a credential. I want a credential. I already had my master's in English. And one of my friends said, Elena, I want you to come to Wesleyan with me this summer. We're going to start their dance program. I went, she didn't, and I took my first course at Wesleyan in their special Master of Arts in Liberal Science program, Liberal Studies program, with a dance concentration. And I absolutely adored it. Got an A+, and I just continued on. And once I was halfway through with the degree, I was able to change my career. I applied for the dance department chair at the Academy of the Performing Arts in Hartford. And I did it as a lark. Again, another dance friend said to me, you need to apply for this, Elena. This is perfect. It's the teaching position, but it's in dance. And I got it. I was there for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, I had finished my master's degree, which meant I could then move to college, the college level. And a dear friend of mine at the academy, who was a drama teacher, had started teaching at Naugatuck Valley and said, they want dance down there. I want you to go down and interview for it. I did that, and I got that job. So that was a real pivotal moment. Getting that credential in dance basically changed the next 25 years of my life, because I actually did the switch from being, a professional English teacher with an avocation of dance to the avocation of English and the vocation of dance. So I did the flip. And I'm a professor of dance and English at the college. I was hired 20 years ago, Naugatuck Valley Community College. I was hired 20 years ago by Dean Sestouli, who wanted to start a fine arts department that had more than just art and music in it. There was also theater at the school, but there had never been any dance. And I was interviewed by him and also by the division director at that time, and they asked me to come in and start putting together a dance curriculum for them. The first semester I was there, I taught English because I used that semester to kind of get everything off the ground. The semester after that, because I was hired as an adjunct, started offering 2 dance courses every semester. So I came in as an instructor, and until 1997, for 4 years I was an adjunct, but I had formulated the program by then. So in 97, when the dean went to the state and said, we have a full fine arts department, can we get it licensed? Everything was all together, and at that point I was hired full-time. The college didn't feel that the community would sustain a full-time dance department. So for the next 3 years, I taught half of my courses in English and half of my courses in dance. And I kept pushing a little bit, and by that time, of course, more students were coming in and we were able to offer more courses. By 2001, I was just teaching dance, I wasn't teaching English anymore. So we had a full load of dance courses. It was for the dance major, there were 9 main courses. And then as students came in and I was surveying them, I realized that there were very specific needs that they had. So we started offering classes in pedagogy, and we started with dance pedagogy for early childhood education because we also have that department at the school, that division. So that worked out very well, and we since have added elementary and secondary. We then took our basic 9 classes and started making levels. So we had our ballet level 1, 2, 3. We moved into a 3rd level, same with modern 1, 2, 3. We added kinesiology for dancers. The history and appreciation of world dance, which I've taught from day 1, is a course that is required by all the arts majors at the school. I moved to associate professor, and at that point, our very, very dear chair, who had been there for over 28 years, I think, had decided to retire, and I was appointed chair of the Fine Arts Department. I wanted to bring it into the 21st century, so I went about changing, of course, working with my department. We changed the name to the Visual and Performing Arts. It became the Department of the Arts because we had digital arts under us also. And the digital arts always kind of hung out by itself, so this created an umbrella. Our degree was actually changed to the Visual and Performing Arts degree, and is the only one in a 2-year college in the state. At that time, and actually in 1999, I started working for the state for the dance task force. And Connecticut has a wonderful arts administrator working up in Hartford, and he was our facilitator, and he gathered the dancers from around the state, and I stayed with this task force committee made up mostly of educators. He was adamant that dance teachers should be treated the same way as every other teacher. He himself had been a music teacher, and he felt that the dance educators were really getting the short end of the stick because they were paid as artists, not as teachers, which meant that they had no benefits and their pay scale was much lower. So Scott was a wonderful influence on us, really helped us mold the certification, so I became instrumental in getting the dance certification K-12 through the state. When that finally was accepted, Naugatuck Valley Community College and Central Connecticut State University were the 2 schools that were awarded that formal pathways. So we needed the 30 credits for those students for their major. So anything that we didn't have we added, or if we did have it, we tailored it to fit these certification needs. Pilates Wellness was added. I changed names of some of my courses from composition to choreographic principles, just so it really aligned, all the courses aligned themselves with the dance certification state requirements. I was chair for 6 years, and at that point we had new administration at the school, and they wanted to change a lot of the upper level, and a new music person had come in, and he took over for the chair of the department. I was then made coordinator of the dance department because we do have 3 programs. We've got the Visual and Performing Arts degree, the dance certificate, and the formal pathways to dance certification K-12. I think what I can teach others about following their passion is they just have to go for it. I was told, you can't do this. You can't make a living at dance. Well, I can, and I have. And when my students come to me and say, my mom says that there's nothing for me to do with this degree, there's 2 things I tell them. Is number 1, you follow your passion, and number 2, you have a backup plan. So I always like my students to be double majors, or to have even a different major and attach their dance certificate that we have at the college to another major. So I have students right now who are double majoring in business and dance, and early childhood education and dance, and then students who are in all different kinds of programs who come in for their dance certificate. And the difference is 30 credits versus 24 credits. It works very well for them. And there are some students who perhaps have that passion, but really do not have the artistic talent or wherewithal. And I always tell them that's okay too. You can always experience dance in one way or another, whether it's with a group of friends, a small community group, or in a professional company. You don't have to be in a professional company to still do what you love to do. There's so many different outlets for anyone who loves the arts in so many different levels. And so I really try to encourage my students to stay with their art form and stay with their passion. The students who have graduated with majors, those who've gone on for 4-year degrees, they all have jobs. A lot of them in the magnet art schools, some of them in community organizations, in children's organizations where they incorporate dance. There's also students who decide just to use their 2-year degree. They have jobs at spas, they have jobs at health clubs, they have jobs in studios, and I have students who own their own studios. I have one student especially who has a studio of the performing arts. So she's offering a lot more than dance. And 5 of my graduates work for her. So it's really exciting that they have found, they've been able to share their passion and still be prosperous and make a living at it. So that's very exciting, I think. One of the things when my students choreograph for our concerts at school, I do not let them use music with lyrics. And that's because I do not want them to be influenced by the lyrics. I very seldom, I don't think I have ever used music with lyrics to choreograph. And I've been, as I said, choreographing for a long time. Probably one of my, again, maybe a pivotal moment was during my first class, graduate class, and it was the Shakespeare Institute at the University of Bridgeport. And we were seeing the plays at that time at Shakespeare in Stratford. And one of the plays that was being presented that summer was Hamlet. And for my project in the 6-credit graduate course, of course I wrote the paper, but I performed Ophelia. And that kind of started me on the whole idea of using literature or women from literature to express dance, and that became my artistic expression. So when I did my one-woman concert for Wesleyan for that master's degree, I actually used 6 women from drama to take into dance form, dance expression, which worked well. So I've still been doing that at the college a bit. I've done 3 Sisters for the students, Chekhov's 3 Sisters. Last year we did Lovely Bones, using 5 stages of a woman's life from a passage that was in that book by Alice Sebald. We also did Book Thief last year, where some of our drama students joined us and actually spoke the words on stage while the dancers were taking on the characters during that Holocaust period. So there's been, I guess I've done a lot of choreographing using literature as the impetus for what I'm doing, and music. And I love Yo-Yo Ma. That's been my last piece, and Ennio Morricone was the last choreographer I used. And we are redoing that particular piece this year in our concert called Our Stories, Our Reunion. And it's our 20th year of dance at the college that we're celebrating. And
So it means 20 years you've been there.
20 years. This
Since
is my 20th year. And so many of my former ensemble members have gotten in touch with me recently, and so I'm inviting them all back for the concert, and some are performing. Those ladies that I told you are in that school out in Southbury are all going to get together and put together a piece. My faculty are performing. We're going to do this piece called Reunion, and that is actually based on Florent Ferramica's artwork, his mixed media called Reunion. And he and I just started speaking together. I love to collaborate with other artists. I've done a lot of that. I've choreographed for a lot of musicals. So the collaboration between, the director, the musical director, the band director, that's always great fun for me to do that. And Lauren and I were just talking, and I said, how do you feel about my bringing one of your pieces to life? And he loved the idea, and we met. I had him listen to the music, and we did both choose Yo-Yo Ma, and kind of went from there. I used that as a basis of choreography, and then my students performed it. So that's always exciting. I think one of the things that I realize is one person can be a founder and can create something, but once that person leaves, there's always someone else who can take that place. Hopefully there will be some kind of legacy left behind. I would love to have that legacy that I was the founder of this program. I brought it forward in many ways for 20 years. But I'm also trying to be very realistic that whoever is hired next maybe will have a very different slant on how dance should be taught. Our president of the college has talked about Naugatuck Valley being an international arts center, so that maybe there will be more international dance. We have African, Caribbean, American vernacular jazz dance now, our world dance class. Our master classes tend to be in all different kinds of styles and ethnicities, etc. That changes every year. Our concert always has a different focus every year. I do not, so much of what is going to happen in Connecticut and with Connecticut higher education is budgetary. And I think that's going to have an influence. I hope to leave a legacy of historical dance, historical repertory at the school, to instill in the students how important our American dance history is, but to also instill in them an appreciation for all the cultures around the world and how they use dance, in some ways the same, in some ways very different than the way we do. I hope that I have inspired students to be able to follow their dream, to keep their passion alive, to understand that dance is an art form. Yes, it can be entertaining, and I think most of the time we hope it's entertaining, but the thing that perhaps makes it an art is when a work is presented that is thought-provoking, that has a strong emotional intent, and it's not just about how high you can kick your leg, it's how you can move people, how you can communicate with others. And if you have a universal message in your work that people can grasp, then your work will live and it will be meaningful to others and not just to you or just to your dancers. My former students said to me at one point, Elena, thank you for never accepting mediocrity. She is now a psychology professor at the college. She was in one of the first dance ensembles that performed. Her picture hangs downstairs in our fine arts lobby. I hope, what do I want to be remembered for? As a caring educator, as somebody who cared and inspired people. And I hope to continue inspiring people. Maybe not in the classroom, but some way or other. And in the United States especially, the type of culture that we have, dance in many parts of our culture is considered effeminate, is considered not kind of main stage, unless it's entertainment form. So I think it's one of the art forms that many people kind of put aside because they're afraid to expose themselves to something that really opens you up. Dance is one of the art forms that is made of ourselves. We are exposing ourselves, our whole body and mind, when we're performing. It's also a performing art. It's not like a visual art. You know, you can be in your studio and you create and no one sees you do the creation and you have the finished product. But in dance, dance is happening at that moment. You have to be experiencing it. And I think for many people, they don't want to do the work that it takes to understand dance. And that's difficult for someone who's grown up as a dancer. The other thing I would say from a professional standpoint is having people understand that it's not just about the neck up. Our communication comes from our body language, and that communicates more to us than the words that we're saying. And acknowledging your body and acknowledging it as an expressive vehicle, and it can be an artistic vehicle. I think for people who are not dancers, that is something very hard for them to acknowledge. One of the most exciting things for me as a professor is when I see that student come into class who doesn't really understand his or her body, doesn't really understand what we're all about, and they have that aha moment. And it's like, oh, I'm connected. I'm not just a head, I'm not just a mind or thoughts. My body is going to express my thoughts too. And sometimes that is just a beautiful crystal moment when you can actually see that happen in a student working. So I guess that's kind of the challenge, shall we say. Maybe not a difficult moment, but a challenge as a dance professional and as a dance educator.
How rewarding for you to feel that. You see that.
Oh yeah, it's
you
really
see them
exciting.
evolve. You do. You see them
I
evolve
do.
right in front of you.
They come out of the competition studio. I can kick my leg really high. And then all of a sudden they understand, no, it's not about kicking your leg. It's about lifting and growing and maybe showing pleasure, excitement, or worship, or whatever. It has meaning. It's not just a physical activity. One of the paths I take with my dancers is a healthy lifestyle. And they actually have to do a food journal for me for a week. We do not allow soda in the dance department. No one's allowed to bring a soda into the dance department. They have to be active to be in a class. They can't just sit there. I guess to find the joy of movement, the joy of moving their body. That's the important thing. It's not important that they figure out first, second, third position or understand ballet terminology. It's just understanding that there is so much more they can do if they have a healthy body and a body that likes to move. And if they continue moving that body, or if they can start moving that body in any way, in formal, informal dance, Zumba, as you said, yoga, club dancing, if they just get up and use their body, they will feel so much better, and they'll get the natural endorphin high. And it's not about necessarily taking a professional class. It's just getting your body moving and really feeling the energy of it and how it can sustain you.